Hello everyone. My name is Florian Rivoal and I'm a member of the Advisory Board as well as co-editor of the W3C process. Today, in preparation for the AC meeting, I wanted to give you some background information about an upcoming way we will deal with disagreements in our community, the W3C Council. Next slide. So this is part of the director-free project that the Advisory Board as well as the process community group have been working on for some time. Though, in fairness, this has been slowed down a little bit recently as there has been an increased focus on the legal entity project. Nevertheless, you can find work in progress draft at the URL listed on this slide. Slide 3. What is this director-free project about? Well, when the W3C founding director, Tim Berners-Lee, founded the consortium, he was very active with us and did a lot of things. But over time, he has become less active, and eventually, he will retire. But still, many of our founding documents, including the W3C process, ascribe him many important responsibilities. For instance, he deals with questions of discipline. Also, he is the one accepting or rejecting member submissions. He has decision power over group creation and closure. He is responsible for making various formal announcements, and many other things, among which the one I would like to talk about today, handling formal objections. Slide 4. What is a formal objection? In the W3C process, an individual may register a formal objection to a decision. A formal objection to a group decision is one that the reviewer requests that the director considers as part of evaluating the related decision. So how does it work? Slide 5. In practice, it's pretty simple. A group makes a decision or one is proposed for AC review. Somebody doesn't like it, files a formal objection. The director looks at it, reviews both points of views, and issues a decision. And if it turns out as a community we don't like it, we always have the possibility to file an AC appeal, although that is exceedingly rare and hardly ever happens. But it's worth remembering it exists. In practice, there's one extra step to this. Between the point where somebody files an objection and the director looks at it, the W3C staff looks at what has been presented, talks with the objector, talks with the people who made the proposal, and tries to see if we can find common ground, hopefully on everything that has been raised, if not, at least reduce the scope of the disagreement and solve the parts that can be solved. And if at that stage we manage to make everybody happy, then it's the end of the process. There no longer is an objection, and there's therefore nothing to be dealt with. But if we don't find consensus, then the next step is to go to the director, where he would review the opposing points of views, see if he can do something about them, and decide. And again, AC appeal if we can't do anything else. That's the historical point of view, but if you switch to slide 7, in practice it's been a little bit different. As I said, the founding director has been less involved than he used to. So rather than deciding on these formal objections himself, when the team fails to reach consensus among the proposers and the objectors, very often, under delegation from the director, rather than go ask him, they will issue the decisions themselves, based on their experience about how he would rule on various things. They have a good grasp of what a typical director decision would be, and they decide in his place often enough. If it is a complicated case, an unusual one, or they're unsure how the director would decide, then they still go to him. It's under his delegation after all, and he can have the final word here. As time has gone by, this delegation has increased. More often than not, the team is the one handling formal objections directly, and they can still go to their director. After all, they're operating under his delegation, but that has become increasingly rare. Which raises the question, what happens if they never go to the director? What happens if there is no director? Initially, this process was the process of how to ask Tim's opinion. This was grounded in his historical role and the legitimacy he has for having started this web thing. Even without that, the team is still very useful, very helpful in trying to find consensus among the objectors, the proposers, and all of that. And that is great, and there is no reason to change that. But as far as the decision itself comes, we need it to be grounded in something that we can all agree is valid, is legitimate. We try to make decisions by consensus. So when we fail and have to forcibly decide one way or another, this better has some solid grounding under it. Slide 10. And so this is where the ID of the W3C Council would come in. The Council would be formed of all the members of the Advisory Board and all the members of the Technical Architecture Group, as well as the CEO. Pulling here a few sentences from the process to remind you what the AB and the tag are about. And they both do a number of things, but as you can see, I have highlighted here the fact that the AB is here to advise on questions of process and to help with conflict resolution. As for the tag, it is responsible for web architecture, to build consensus about it, resolve issues, coordinate cross-technology architecture. And this is very relevant to what we are talking about here. Slide 11. So this is why we have this notion of a council made of the ABN tag. It fits very well with the mission of its constituent groups. These groups are broad. They have a great diversity of expertise. They have a great diversity of perspective. They broadly represent the consortium, its members, the broader web community, and they are able to look at issues from a broad variety of perspectives and angles. And further than that, their legitimacy is based in the community through the election from which they come. We have also looked over the years at different ways we could handle this process, but whether it's trying to find somebody with the same historical legitimacy as Tim and level of engagement with what the modern web has become, or try to hire somebody with less of a stature but still the same responsibilities, or some other variants. We've explored a number of things, and none of them were really as satisfactory as this notion of a council could be. So this is why this is the one being pursued by the team and W3M, the AB, discussing this in the process community group. Slide 12. So how does formal objection handling happen under a council? Well, mostly it's the same. There's just one step that changes. Initially, same thing, a group decision gets made or a proposal is made to AC review. Somebody may disagree with this, file a formal objection. We still have the team come in, look at the facts and discuss with the various parties to see if they can find common ground. And if they can, it still stops there. And if they cannot, then we do escalate. But in this case, not to the director, but to this W3C Council. But just like previously, if the decision issued there is not to the liking of the AC, there is still the possibility of an appeal. I would like to zoom in on slide 13 on what a council decision is, because the director had broad powers, but here we needed to be a bit more specific. We have defined that to be one of two alternatives. The council could either sustain an objection and therefore agree with the person who objected that there is here a sufficient problem to block progress, overturn the existing decision or reject the proposed one under AC review, and take the work and return it to the community to work out through the problem. Or the council can decide either that, well, there's no issue here, the objector is wrong, or maybe there is an issue, but it is not as severe as the objector makes it to be, and it does not warrant overturning the existing decision or blocking progress of the proposal under AC review, in which case it does go through. And importantly here, the council is not empowered to design alternatives. It is not a committee that can write a specification. It cannot, on its own, change a charter. That is supposed to happen upstream of the council, and we get to the council when there is a proposal to reject a specific design. The council can endorse or reject, but it cannot change. If change is necessary, the council sustains the objection, returns the work to the community, and it starts again from there. Slide 14. How does an invocation of the W3C Council work? Well, we start, as I said earlier, by having the team work through the problem, and when the team concludes that actually consensus cannot be found, then we form a new council and it picks its own chair. I would like to refer you to a separate presentation made on this very topic by David Singer. Please have a look. He will give you more detail about how to form a council. But once that's done, this newly formed council gets a briefing from the team about the issue at hand, the proposal, the complaints about it, the point of view of the various parties, what has been done so far to try and find a solution about it, why that has failed. And having heard that, the council has meetings, goes to hear in confidence the point of views of the various parties that are involved, debates what should be done about it, and eventually makes a decision, preferably by consensus. If that cannot be found, by vote, but preferably by consensus. Once that has been made, the council needs to document and explain its decision. First, for transparency, whether a decision is being overturned or an objection is being overruled, somebody will be unhappy and they deserve to know why the council decided against them. Also for accountability, council members are elected. The electorate deserves to know what is the thinking behind their decisions and hold them accountable to it. And finally, to build precedent. The thinking here is that we don't want to do most of our decisions through formal objections. Most of it should happen through regular consensus building, but having the council document why certain types of decisions are good and why certain are bad, problematic, what is, in the council members' opinion, the constitution of a solid decision, a weak one, and all of that helps the community adopt best practices. And also for future councils, it helps them make decisions that are consistent with the decisions of previous councils. So that's a third reason for documenting the reasons behind council decisions. Slide 15. So where are we now? Well, this idea of a W3C Council has been sketched. It's been written up in a fork of the W3C process. It's currently in draft stage. Not all details have been resolved. More work needs to be done to characterize all the nuances of this process. And importantly, it has not been formally adopted. The director is still in charge of formal objections. Now, as I said, in practice, he delegates that power to the team, but the formal responsibility has not changed. And under his delegation, while it typically goes to the team, it can also, some of the time, be delegated to this notion of a council. And this is something you will probably see more and more often. Both because in some cases we think the council is ready enough to handle a number of interesting and problematic situations, but also because by running this council more and more times, we hope to learn more about the details, about what works and what doesn't, and refine it better so that it can be truly ready for formal adoption when we want to present that to the AC, hopefully later this year or maybe the next one. So this is what I wanted to let you know. I hope this presentation about the W3C Council has been helpful. I remind you about the presentation from David Singer about some of the details I did not have time to get into here. I encourage you to watch that, and I look forward to see you and hear you during the AC meeting soon. Have a great day.